Welcome, everyone, to this second Thursday evening talk of 2023. Gathered in the Zendo, in the cloud, across space and time zones, whatever the time, now, and wherever you are, here, one here. Dogen has a Dharma Hall discourse that begins with an exchange between Joshu, the master who gives us Mu, and a student. A monk asked Joshu, during the 24 hours, how is mind put to use? And Joshu says, you are being used by the 24 hours, while this old monk is using the 24 hours. Which of these times are you talking about? Which kind of time? Being used by the 24 hours? Tossed about by circumstances? Or to be able to use the 24 hours with Joshu's Mu Shin, this really lovely phrase, Mu Shin, no mind. The mind of before knowing and before time. Mind of no preferences. Thoroughgoing equality. And openness. You could say aimlessness. Mu Shin. In another exchange, a monk asked Joshu what he does when he sits. Where do you place your mind during meditation? And Joshu responds, Mu-I, Mu-I, which means where there is no design. That's what I'm doing. Mu-I, no design. And that wonderful nuance for us as English speakers, no I. What is this little I that we set up? But a design. This took me back to an experience that happened in my early 20s. I was at a little summer getaway with friends in upstate New York, way up. Beautiful country in a kind of rustic area with a few cabins and a dirt road that went, oh, maybe it was half a mile, maybe a little less, down to a lake. So early on, friend and I went down this road with our bathing suits on and towels and shoes and things, and we left all of that on the shore and just waded into this lake, and we were in the lake just treading water and talking to one another. All of a sudden she said, don't look up, we've got to run for it. And I looked up and there was this massive swarm of very large black flies. I said to my friend, while we're, neck down underwater, can't we think about it first? How often our investment in thinking is a strategy of avoidance. Let's just think about this, chew on it, figure it. Maybe it will go away. Maybe I'll have more control. Maybe I won't have to face it. When I was a college student, and sometime thereafter, I took an interest in the Danish philosopher Soren Kierkegaard, who has a collection of aphorisms, and one of them that just winks in the direction of our endless diversions. I didn't look it up, so this is a paraphrase remembered from decades ago. But he wrote something like, if we just think about the problems of the world hard enough, everything will be resolved by next Tuesday. Along with Kierkegaard, I was looking into irony that you could understand as serious jest. It can be deadly serious. Kierkegaard also wrote, maybe more famously, life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. The same goes for koans, a reality to be experienced. Actually, I'm not even sure that reality and experience, that there's the slightest gap there. The reality of who you truly are. And so also Zazen. This week, a couple days ago, a student shared part of a recent conversation with a friend. And I didn't really know if the friend was aging or maybe facing an illness. But the friend said, life is so short. I might have done some things differently had I realized. Calls to mind our night verse during session, during these intensive retreats. Life passes quickly by like a fleeting arrow. Actually, already gone. Gone. That's what this is. And always already underway, like Dogen's phrase, continuous practice. Just yesterday, another student, a gifted musician, described conducting Beethoven's Ninth. This mammoth work, this kind of crowning piece in his great repertoire. She said when she walks out on stage to begin this piece, the music is already going on. So she invites the musicians to hear it as they begin. The symphony opens. Actually, back in the day, I played it a lot. So fortunate. It opens with this sort of distant tremolo in the strings, and then a fragment of a descending motif, and these intervals of perfect fifths, just the tones coming in one by one, joining in the sounding. Already happening. Born right now. We can sense this in sitting. No one has ever done this before. And yet, Shakyamuni Buddha is still practicing. All the ancestors, named and unnamed, still practicing in this deep and lively absorption. We join them. They're sitting us. All this momentum and completely new. Completely now. Time itself, you could say, is empty. Or another way of putting it is, it's nothing but you. So what is this sitting? What is Zazen? What happens when we do it? Dogen, among the ancestors and masters, has the most to say about this. Springing from his own experience, he writes about the needle point of Zazen, like an acupuncture needle, precisely placed, so everything is released, everything received, the energy of the whole body freely in motion. Sitting, mountain, still. Dogen's most concise statement, concise and dense, is his short essay, Fukanzazengi, or Universal Recommendations on Zazen, or Universally Recommended Instructions on Doing Zazen. It's the first essay he wrote when he returned from China to Japan. Became this incredibly prolific, incredibly clear master. So tonight I'd like to look at, or begin to look at, the first paragraph of this essay in the context of Dogen's experience. Part of this is inspired by the inheritance of Sambo Zen, this tradition at Mountain Cloud, long and rich. There's a statement, if you go to the Sambo Zen website, a sort of mission statement that says, the fundamental position of Sambo Zen is to stand at the origin point of Buddhism through the Dharma gate of Dogen Zenji. The origin point of Buddhism is a way of naming Shakyamuni Buddha's awakening. You don't have to sign on a dotted line or ascribe to being Buddhist to do this practice, or to go right to the heart of that origin point. So Dogen wrote this Fukanzazengi in 1227, when he was 27 years old. And the Dharma gate of Dogen is right here. So just want to take a moment to visit his story, familiar to many. Born in 1200, not sure who his father was, born in the Japanese court. His mother was a courtesan. He would have been made crown prince. Brilliant. Brilliant as a child. It's said that by the age of 2, he could speak Japanese and Chinese, and by 4, he could write those languages. When Dogen was 3 or maybe 2, it depends on how you calculate. Asian cultures tend to calculate age from conception. And when that gets translated into the West, sometimes it slides around a bit. At any rate, his father died. He's very young. And his uncle became his sponsor. But then 5 years later, Dogen's mother died. He was quite close to his mother. She was cremated. He's there at her funeral pyre, watching the wisp of smoke curl up. And at that moment, at that age, he had a deep experience of impermanence, of constant change. Made a very deep impression. And for the rest of his life, Dogen explored, or you could say, practiced-realized, and wrote about this incalculable dynamism, constantly changing. Hear that phrase, constant change, and tend to think this, then this, then this, then this, but sped up to the nth degree. But it's not that. All things constantly changing, this one existence, mobile, mutable, and completely unfixed. When he was 12, Dogen's uncle wanted him to go into court. But the 12-year-old wanted to pursue his experience. So he became a monk. He entered, he later said, with this driving question. If all people are endowed with Buddha nature, as the sutras teach, why do we need to practice? Why do we have to train so strenuously to realize what we already are? Early on, Dogen had some openings, some experience, but he wasn't satisfied. The question was not put to rest. So when he's about 24 years old, he and his Japanese master make this arduous voyage to China to look for authentic Chan Zen. It's a long story, interesting story, but they finally come to this monastery where Rujing is the abbot, and Dogen has an immediate affinity for Rujing. So he stays there for 3 or 4 years. At one time, probably in the very early morning sitting, Dogen's concentrating deeply. And Rujing is walking around, Maybe it's Kenton, maybe he's just circumambulating the Zendo, just checking on this, just this presence walking behind the monks. And sitting next to Dogen, there's this monk who's falling asleep. And the master cries out, Zen is not about falling asleep. Zen is dropping away, body and mind. The phrase just hits Dogen. Zen is dropping away, body and mind. That's what happened. He goes to Rujing's Doksan room, lights incense, bows, and they have this amazing exchange that only deepens Dogen's experience and confirms it. So he writes, the way is originally perfect and all-pervading. That's the first line of the Fukanzazengi, and that is Dogen's experience. That's his teaching, the heart of it, dropping away body and mind. His strongest advice, you could say, on how to sit. There's a record of a later meeting where Dogen asks Rujing, what is the mind of a bodhisattva? You know, this being of great compassion whose awakening is for the awakening of all, is so clear. What is that mind? And Rujing replies, it is soft, flexible mind. So Dogen asks, what is soft, flexible mind? And Rujing says, it is the willingness to let go of body and mind. I think it was about 550 years later, Ryokan, this priest, poet, calligrapher, and great devotee of Dogen, wrote, body and mind dropped away is simply the upright truth. It's the heart of the Fukanzazengi with its fundamental message. Everyone should do Zazen. Everyone should sit. Universal recommendations. So I just wanted to offer one more word before looking, maybe for not too long, at this first paragraph. Last night at the Wisdom Wednesday sit, Will spoke about light. He said something like, practice with Mu, practicing with Mu, the heart opens and the self falls away. That's the light. The heart opens, the self falls away, and the whole world comes rushing in. Light. On more than one of our times together, I heard John Gaynor describe Dogen's experience, which is so clearly, densely expressed in this essay, as light. One shining. This enlightenment is not something to get or attain. It's this. It's this. And it's Zazen. So here's the first paragraph of Dogen's instruction. It's 4 statements and 4 questions. And don't worry if this starts to seem cerebral, just let the language sort of wash over. And if something strikes, let that be like a little bell. So here's Dogen. The way is originally perfect and all-pervading. How could it be contingent on practice and realization? The Dharma vehicle is utterly free and untrammeled. What need is there for concentrated effort? Indeed, the whole body is far beyond the world's dust. Who could believe in a means to brush it clean? It is never apart from you, right where you are. What is the use of going off here and there to practice? The questions come in the wake of the statements, sort of opening out to make each point wider and clearer, redounding back to these statements, like the two wings of that great bird of the Dharma, wisdom and compassion, or like counterpoint in music, two lines, one piece. What if we just read the statements? Just 4 of them. The way is originally perfect and all-pervading. The Dharma vehicle is utterly free and untrammeled. Indeed, the whole body is far beyond the world's dust. It is never apart from you, right where you are. The way, the Tao, is this practice, and it's you. Intrinsically complete and nowhere absent. Or with David Hinton, this marvelous author and translator, we can call this all-pervading dynamism, as he does, absence. Absence with no opposite. Perfect and empty. The Dharma vehicle is utterly free and untrammeled. This Dharma vehicle, this body, the 10,000 myriad things, everything changing all the time and completely free to do so. Untrammeled, what a great word. Nothing to impede or impinge on anything. We delude ourselves that things aren't changing that quickly, that we can manage change. But this reality is beyond anything we can imagine, let alone control. We can't really fathom the degree or speed or constancy of change. Even the cells, the flesh and bone of our bodies, are constantly changing, renewed, hugely dynamic. I looked this up today, just one of those rabbit trails, reading all about human anatomy and this. There's no, the average change is from 7 to 10 years, not one cell is the same. They break down differently, so it actually takes about 70 years to get a new brain. But it just takes a few days to get other cells. I think it's like 5 days for the gut, and the blood doesn't take long at all. Hugely dynamic. This is so integral to Dogen's vision, stemming from that spark at his mother's funeral pyre and opening wide with his experience. Body and mind fallen away, dropped away. Or as Rujing puts it, fallen away, body and mind. That's what this is. For Dogen, maybe for us, an incredible, explosive perspective of infinite possibilities. Anything and everything is possible. It may be an actuality, or it may always only be a possibility. This infinite creativity, infinite diversity. Nothing is replicated. We like to try to make things the same, like cars and computer chips and manufacturing lines. We might turn to nature, which is, recursive. It's a different kind of redundancy. It's not like that. It's like the fractals of leaves and snowflakes, the rings in a tree. They're recursive, but they don't repeat. It's never exactly the same. A single blade of grass, and each one is different, unique. Dogen writes, indeed, the whole body is far beyond the world's dust. The whole body. Maybe we can't fathom it. Whatever we come up with is part of the world's dust. But we can experience the great clarity. For a while, Rujing Roshi called it boundless clarity. And then he dropped the clarity and it just went for boundless. Not a speck. Or as the sixth Chinese ancestor Huineng put it, where could any dust alight? Where could it stick to this whole body? So clear. It is never apart from you, right where you are. Again, I remember Will speaking to this line once. It is never apart from right where you are. And he quoted the end of Hakuin's Song of Zazen. In coming and going, we never leave home. Whatever you pick up, wherever you turn, that's it. There's the light. Your whole body. So just briefly to insert these questions that Dogen uses, it's this wonderful move where he's sort of calling into question and at the same time pointing exactly to the statement, to this sort of fundamental attribute of this world. The way is originally perfect and all-pervading. How could it be contingent on practice and realization? It's not contingent. The way is practicing, realizing. The all-pervading way compels us to practice. I've had it said to me, you must sit. We must sit. The Dharma vehicle is utterly free and untrammeled. What need is there for concentrated effort? What we're concentrating on is always already changing. And yet, what a joy to be absorbed in this dynamism, to rest in it. At the same time, accepting, deeply accepting that we cannot manage the magnitude of change. The whole body is far beyond the world's dust. Who could believe in a means to brush it clean? Nothing to clean, nothing to fix. And yet, and so we practice. It's never apart from you, right where you are. What is the use of going off here and there to practice? Where would you go? There's no distance. There's no near or far. There's nothing outside this. And yet, how helpful, how grateful to practice together. this treasure of the Sangha, manifesting, maintaining that one treasure that holds all three. Just a few lines later in this essay, Dogen gives a very direct instruction. Many of us know it. Therefore, put aside the intellectual practice of investigating words and chasing phrases, and learn to take the backward step that turns the light and shines it inward. Body and mind of themselves will drop away, and your original face will manifest. It's a lot of language. Take the backward step and shine the light inward. Learn the step. And who you truly are will manifest on its own. Right here. That original light. Exactly as you are. I have a little exclamation point I put at the bottom. Didn't know I'd say this, but just came rising up. In part because of this shared practice here at Mountain Cloud, also with John at Sonnenhof these years, somehow hearing it all resonate. That original light, unconditional love and equality, constant dynamic change, and infinite possibilities. So here's to the ongoing exploration. Thanks for sharing the way.